And here we are, part 2 of the Chaotix review. I'm not particularly original and have decided to cover the group in the order SRB2 feeds me them on the character select screen, meaning that today's video is on Mighty the Armadillo. It'll likely be a little shorter than SBO, because as it turns out, Mighty is just as boring in SRB2 as he is in official Sonic media. No, I will not apologise for that statement. Without further ado, let's get into it. I mentioned in the last video that I had seen some people say SBO was a weak point of the Chaotix, with many people not liking how he played for one reason or another, but if there was one character I had seen pretty much unanimously put at the bottom of people's rankings, it was Mighty. Lots of complaints about finicky controls mostly, but it was clear that people also just weren't that enthused about the moveset on offer. Having now played as the Armadillo, I can safely say I agree with the complaints. Mighty is similar to SBO in that he is a vertically oriented character that has a game plan centering on their wall movement. The main difference between Mighty and other characters with a lot of verticality is that he ends up using the other, read wrong, side of the vertical axis most of the time. When someone says a character has a lot of verticality, they almost certainly mean that character has some way of making themselves go up, but Mighty's primary ability is to do the opposite. He is intent on uncontrollably slamming himself into the ground. Like in Sonic Mania, Mighty's main ability is the hammer drop, which is mostly just a standard stomp. Destroys breakable floors, does AoE damage to enemies nearby, that sort of thing. The problem with this is manifold, but for now we'll stick to the fact that it feels really odd to make a character's main ability a stomp. Lots of characters have them, sure, because they're useful for getting to the ground quickly and as such is a useful extra gimmick to give to a lot of movesets. Indeed, lots of characters who are vertically oriented will have one, because it helps to get to the ground quickly if you get too high using your abilities. But a stomp is almost always a side ability, something you stick on one of the custom buttons so your main abilities are unimpeded. By their very nature, they stop your flow and put you in a very dangerous situation if you accidentally perform one, as it leaves you hurtling towards the ground or a bottomless pit with no way to recover. Most importantly, they have fairly limited use cases, because SRB2 wasn't built with them in mind, and as such, the level design will never really support them. So therefore, it feels really strange to have the hammer drop be your main ability, especially when it doesn't do anything differently to any other stomp. The only aid change is that holding spin will allow you to perform the world's worst drop dash. Seriously, this thing is absolutely useless. I used it a few times just so I had footage for it, and then never again because it has absolutely no power behind it. So, a stomp as a main ability is strange enough as is, but it gets even stranger when you consider how it combos with its other ability, the wall kick. This is what allows Mighty to travel the other direction on the vertical plane, and is certainly the ability I use the most. It's almost like a wall jump. Unlike characters like Knuckles or SBO, you cannot really move on the wall, and instead simply have to jump back off and aims towards another wall. You actually get a really good vertical boost whenever you kick off from a wall, so when the ability works well, you can get up crevices right quick. The problem? Very rarely does it feel good and like the wall kick is working correctly, and that's for 3 different reasons. Firstly, and it's a problem with all characters who attach to walls, you can very easily be disoriented by constant camera changes when jumping between walls. I say it's particularly bad here though, because you never seem to end up where you assume you are after jumping off a wall, always somewhere off to the side, as the camera can't seem to reliably turn a full 180 degrees to face directly opposite you, like most climbing characters will do. Secondly, and this is the big one, someone made the incomprehensibly poor decision to map the wall kick and the hammer drop to the same button. I'd like to think I don't need to explain the problem with mapping these 2 abilities onto the same button in the same context, but I will say that I don't think I struggled with accidentally hammer dropping as much as most others seem to do. I was generally able to always wall kick when I wanted to, and not accidentally perform a hammer drop and crash into a bottomless pit like a lot of others seem to be struggling with. Of course, saying that, I still didn't want to try and use wall kicks over a bottomless pit, because it's always the one time you really need it to work properly when it doesn't. Finally, I found that I attach to walls when I feel I really shouldn't have. Jumping higher in SRB2 is done by holding down jump, but doing that too near a wall when playing as Mighty will just cause you to perform a wall kick, and there were plenty of times I felt that I was far enough away from a wall to not do this and I attached anyway. And finally, Mighty has the Tough Guy passive ability, which effectively makes him immune to certain damage types while spinning, read jumping. As a rule, if Mighty is hit by something sharp, like spikes, thorns or a Lancerbot, as long as he is in a ball state, he won't be damaged. How you'll act afterwards is seemingly a bit all over the place though. Sometimes you'll uncurl and become vulnerable if you hit spikes again without landing on a platform, sometimes you'll phase through the damaging object, and sometimes you'll be knocked away, though the distance and angle that is too seems to be variable and somewhat controllable, which could potentially lead to an interesting shortcut or two. You're also immune to some projectiles, though it seems to be a little more nebulous what Mighty is affected by in this group. He isn't immune to the GREENFLOWER boss's laser, but is knocked back by the Techno Hill boss's sludds. I almost feel that this gimmick could have been taken further by making Mighty immune, or at least resistant, to more obstacles. Maybe his hard shell could prevent him from being crushed, for example, or fire won't hurt him. At the moment, it just feels like Tough Guy is a little bit of a throwaway ability, when it could really become Mighty's whole gimmick. Make him the defense guy, immune to practically everything through ever more unbelievable cell-based justification. It's helped to differentiate him somewhat, and I'd argue is a bit more reflective of his vanilla appearances than someone who stomps a lot and jumps off walls. Yes, I know that those are based off his abilities in previous games, but I'd argue his Knight invulnerability is a bigger part of Mighty's character in most adaptations. I think the biggest problem with Mighty is that he doesn't have that modded character power creep. One thing I think is almost impossible to deny about most modded characters in SRB2 is that they are far more powerful than anyone in the vanilla game, being able to complete levels faster and more easily with less practice. I think that's fine, and indeed necessary to accurately depict many characters' abilities, but it makes it jarring to play as a character who just has to take the vanilla route, like Mighty does a lot of the time. The Stomp and Tough Guy are rarely going to get you into different paths, and the wall kick is too unreliable to be comfortably used in many places and requires 2 walls to jump between, unlike a simple wall climb. It means that, to be honest, Mighty just feels like a weaker SPO. His strength's negligible, and the Chameleon is infinitely better at what you're going to be struggling to do with Mighty 60% of the time you're playing. Sprites-wise, I feel that there are points that Mighty is better than SPO in, and points where he's a lot worse. I don't think his posing is quite as good. SPO was fantastic at that and had some really unique ones. I think Mighty does have incredibly good individual sprites though, and I think many animations are fantastic. Walking especially, as well as the end goalpost portrait and the idle animations are particular highlights. Generally, he has very good 3D effects while in these states. Sprite detailing really makes parts like his brow pop, and the little flourishes that help him showcase a sense of determination and competence, similar but still different to that of SPO, is commendable. I like the effects used in a lot of places, and the little touch that objects close to where he lands when using a hammer drop, but not in the AoE, will bounce slightly. It's so close to being practically perfect. I just have one complaint. Who signed off on this being his running animation? He looks ridiculous, like some sort of completely different character from a completely different series. I can see the vision from the side, but you have to recognise that you spend most of your time looking at Mighty from behind, where he's just a ball. You can't see his right hand, which just makes me look at his ears or his replacement, and all I can see is Opa Opa. It's horrible. So bad it's good. Look at his legs. Up to this point, I'd say Mighty generally looked pretty serious and cool, but then after I got hit with this animation for the first time, I knew I'd never be able to feel that again. I don't know whether to hate the animation for ruining that for me, or love it for, well, being this. So yeah, I'm going to have to be a populist on this one and preemptively place Mighty as last place in the Chaotix. Admittedly, I've only played the 2 characters so far, so that might be subject to change in the future. I somewhat doubt it though. I simply do not enjoy the moveset. It's clunky, confusing in a I don't think it's working right way, and it's generally a neutered version of SPO with a few extra, oftentimes redundant abilities. I would say that putting the wall kick on spin might help to stop the constant misinputs that every Mighty player is currently suffering from, but I don't think that changes the fact that Mighty just feels weak. he is nowhere near as powerful as the vast majority of modded characters, and indeed feels weaker than many vanilla characters. He needs something, anything, to make him a more appealing choice, because he's otherwise just going to remain outclassed by other members of the Chaotix, as he remains stuck as some sort of jack of all trades that is actually just crap at everything. That's why I said it might be worthwhile to look at making him the defense guy. It certainly helped to make him stand out more, and being nigh invulnerable might help to offset his lack of power creep somewhat. His sprites are generally really good on a numerical basis, but the simple fact of the matter is that anytime you're on the ground, you're going to see this. It's funny, but it's a real distraction that doesn't fit in with everything else in the slightest. I think the main thing that saves him mighty is that he's generally pretty competent at what he sets out to do, and that allows him to just about make it to a 5 out of 10. Very average. Sami B is the next member of the Chaotix, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.